The sun did rise on Sunday morning, and Iowa still had a strong football program, a stable football program, and an appearance coming up in a pretty significant bowl game with a 10-3 record. So not all is lost here, Hawkeye Nation. We invite you in, of course, over the next hour here at the Voice of College Football and our Iowa Hawkeye show. And the guy that makes it happen right here is, of course, Corey Brada from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Hey, Corey.
How are you, Mark?
I am doing well. Unfortunately, for content's sake, for discussion and debate's sake, the college football playoff did not turn out to be the chaotic mess that I both wanted and forecasted.
And let's be honest, that chaotic mess would have helped prompt a sooner expansion. So I'm disappointed in it. I'm disappointed that two SEC schools made it. Not to say that Alabama and Georgia aren't deserving. There's no debate. I saw you had to debate people about whether Notre Dame should get in over Alabama. That's such a ridiculous notion that Notre Dame should be. I mean, I don't like either school, as you well know. But the fact is that Alabama is an SEC champion and one loss and knocked off what we perceived all season to be the best team in the country, ran up the score against the best defense in the country. Notre Dame, I'm so tired of them not accepting a spot in the conference and having to win a championship. So, anyways, I hope that the fact that Baylor, I don't think the Big 12 has much pull. I think we've established that in recent years with what's happened. But hopefully the Notre Dame not getting in with one loss, I hope that will just kind of seal the deal on expansion. I know Don Patterson and I talked about it over the weekend, about the possibilities of a 12-team playoff and how much of a disadvantage that would be to teams that don't get that bye. And he's sort of swayed me because I used to think, well, it's a good reward that helps, and it helps incentive to play harder for seeding. But at the same time, like Don points out as a former coach, it's such an unfair advantage to schools that are banged up by the end of the season. So I hope I'm rooting for an 8-team playoff. And who knows? I know there likely will be some movement here in the coming months after the season's complete. And hopefully next year we're talking about an 8-team playoff. I don't know, how feasible is it that it could happen as soon as next season, Mark?
Well, Corey, I'm just a bit surprised that we never came upon that subject of buys in the college football playoff. And I feel a bit slighted now that I was not the one to correct you on the.
You probably were.
The topic of buys.
You probably have. I actually asked that question to Reese Davis. So Don wanted me to ask Reese that when we had some availability here in Ames for College Game Day, and Reese is not a proponent. The one thing that Reese doesn't agree with Don about, he does agree about the what you have stated about the buys and what Don Patterson has stated, but what he does not agree with is automatic bids from each Power 5 conference. And I can see that both ways. What he doesn't want to see happen is, you get not a 7-5, but a 8-4, 9-3 Northwestern team that happens to win a 4-team tiebreaker in the Western Division. And, Ohio State's quarterback goes down the week of the game and they find a way to squeak through. Do they deserve a spot? My answer to that question is yes. If you look at the NFL playoffs, we've had teams under 500 from the NFC West, I believe, in not real recent seasons, but in my lifetime, I want to say the Rams and or the Seahawks have done that. And there's usually a bad division, and I think that's okay. And I believe the NBA is that way. It never really happens, but I believe, because and somebody may correct me on this, but I believe each division, there's 4 teams in each division, and of course you get the top 8 from each conference. I could be wrong on that. Maybe it's just strictly top 8. But I think regardless, you still have top 8 from each conference, regardless of record. We've had years in the NBA where the Eastern Conference just sucks. And yet, you've got teams 5, 6, 7, 8 who are all under 500 and a couple of teams in the West that are over 500 that don't make it. That's just sports. And I think it provides some incentive within the division.
32 teams in the NBA, 16 make the playoffs. So obviously you're going to have at times some under 500 teams make the playoffs. I go back to when I started watching the NBA, 16 teams made the playoffs out of a 23-team league. It was one time 16 out of 21 in the NHL. So I would never want to go to anything close to that. But we're talking about 12 to 16 teams out of 130 in the FBS. And when it comes to the conferences, I like you. I believe we're on the same page in regards to this. Would I not want to see a regular influx of 8-4 teams reaching the playoffs just because they got hot? Somewhat similar to an NCAA men's basketball tournament on championship weekend in the conference play when somebody gets hot through the tournament.
So you don't like that? You don't like the 10 and 20 teams from the Conference USA in college basketball?
I think it's phenomenal.
Oh, you do?
I like
okay.
it. I enjoy it because they earned it. They got hot, but they have to win these conference tournaments, or they have to win 4 and 5 games. So the equivalent there in college football is, I would not mind that because it's such an extreme aberration. That's always brought up by critics. I've run through the scenarios for 10 and 15 years in the past, and this would have come up once or twice, maybe, where somebody with more than 3 losses has won a conference championship.
Well, and let's remember in college football, I mean, we're comparing apples to oranges there, because in college basketball, everybody gets entry into a conference tournament, regardless of how you play in the regular season. In Power 5 college football, only the 2 best teams, or the best team from one division versus the best team from the other division, make the championship game. So regardless if Northwestern gets into the championship game as a 9-3 team, or say some chaotic scenario happens and they're 8-4 and they get in, they still earn their way in. 8-4 is not under 5. I mean, that's still a good record. I know, again, we're talking about a lot of teams, and only, 8-12 or 8-16 berths into a playoff. I wouldn't mind a 16-team playoff for the record. I just think I don't think it's ever going to happen. I just think it's we're talking about wear and tear and concern with teams that have a bye. It's going to come into play with a 16-team playoff as well. I don't know how late do you have these kids playing? Are we playing into February now if we do that? I mean, I just think that really backs things up. I mean, potentially you could slide everything up and have them start in, this coming weekend. Could you do that, Mark? Could you just say you're playing the weekend after this, the final selection day?
I don't think we should, because there's your built-in bye for the teams that did not advance to conference championship games. They would have had the bye on conference championship weekend, but the teams that had to play in a conference championship game, and this is probably one of the reasons why the 12-team format that was unveiled this past summer includes such an advantage for those 4 conference champions. And from that standpoint, that is the only I'm a proponent of the format in regards to advancing, benefiting, rewarding conference championships, maybe with home field advantage. But this being an Iowa show, I guess we've digressed. We could talk playoffs all over the place.
I think Iowa fans are fine. I mean, nobody's complaining in the chat. I think Iowa fans are fine with it because there's not. I mean, you not to rip how you led into this show, Mark, but there isn't a lot of excitement around the Citrus Bowl bid. I haven't talked to anybody, and now maybe I'm sure there are some people that are pumped up about it, but I've heard a lot of people just be like, "Who cares?" at this point, and that's too bad because this team still went 10-3. What's incredible, and I've said this before, is that this team now that it's over, we can, because it's over, the season's over. I mean, we get a bowl game, but the regular season is over. As I look back, I think, okay, this offense was not only bad, it was historically bad. It was historically bad, and it never got much. It didn't really get any better. I mean, it got, those last 4 games, they started to run the ball a little bit better. It looked like the interior of the line, started to mesh a little bit better. They were healthy and whatnot. But for an offense that's this porous, to win 10 regular season games and to win the West title is incredible. And it's just absolutely incredible. And I give a lot of credit to Phil Parker, and I give a lot of credit to LeVar Woods, and I give a ton of credit to the players because they found a way to win so many games. The schedule was not as hard as we thought it was going to be. And by the way, the schedule next year is a dog. I don't know that I've seen it's basically what Nebraska seems to get every year. Iowa gets. I mean, there's a 4-game stretch, Mark. Let me grab the schedule because Don and I were talking about this the other night. There's a stretch there at the beginning where Iowa has like 4 just ridiculous weeks in a row. Let me pull up the 2022 schedule. And this ain't changing. This year you thought Indiana was going to be good. We thought Iowa State was going to be good. This is totally different. So you get South Dakota State, who they're no slouch. They just beat Colorado State this year.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be a difficult opener. And then you get Iowa State. I think Iowa State will be good. I don't know how good. They're going to lose a lot. You're going to get Nevada, which I was very disappointed to see Norvell leave because, of course, he's an Iowa guy. That would have been a cool reunion. But, of course, he goes on to Colorado State, ironically enough. But then you get at Minnesota. Ibrahim's back. I think that's going to be a really good Gopher team. Home against Michigan, at Purdue, at Ohio State. That's a pretty ridiculously tough start to the Big Ten season. There, you could see a scenario where Iowa's 0-4 in the Big Ten. And I'm not saying it's going to happen, and I don't think that's going to change. I mean, do you see any of those teams? Maybe Purdue because they're losing Karlaftis and David Bell. Maybe that game isn't as tough, but again, I am not ever going to overlook that game again as long as Jeff Brom is there. So it's going to be interesting to see. And then of course you have some very winnable games: Northwestern, at Rutgers, at Illinois. But I think Illinois is going to be a lot better. And then Wisconsin and Nebraska. It's a tough schedule. That's a really solid schedule. And again, non-conference is going to take a bit of a hit as far as perception because Iowa State's not perceived to be a top 10 team heading into next year. And I'm sure Nevada is going to take a perception hit with the loss of their coach. But anyways, season's not over. I know I'm kind of acting like it is. We still have a bowl game left. And there are things to talk about. Tyrone Tracy, I see Jackson here comments on that. I did post a video on my channel earlier today from the Hawkeye of the Storm in reaction to that. It's not a surprise. It's disappointing. But I mean, what do you expect? I guess there were some people that were ripping Tyrone for that earlier today because Terry Roberts, Iowa's corner, posted something on Twitter defending Tyrone's decision. I mean, he doesn't need to defend Tyrone's decision. Tyrone needs to do what's best for him. I have nothing against what Tyrone Tracy has been a leader. He has been he's not perfect. He tweeted that thing out about not getting enough playing time. And I'm sure he, probably had something to do with his brother tweeting something out earlier in the season, but that's a human thing to do. We're imperfect people and you're frustrated. He was talking preseason about wanting to be the best receiver in the Big Ten, Mark. And just think about how much work he put into his craft and then to have the season he's had and to have, go back home. He's an Indianapolis guy to go back home and get beat the way they got beat on Saturday. It's this unfortunate series of events. I'll be rooting for him completely wherever he ends up. And it's just unfortunate it didn't work out here because he had great moments, especially in 2018.
Yeah, so I'm looking at his numbers right now.
19.
Yeah, I'm looking at his numbers right now, and it's understandable for a redshirt freshman of 2019 who had 36 catches, 16 yards per catch, and 3 touchdowns to then be frustrated 2 years later when he's not nearly as productive later in his career at the same stop.
Yeah, and it's it's a series of things as to why he has digressed. I mean, I think, if I was to look at specific reasons why he's taken a step back, obviously the first thing you'd have to look at is the quarterback change because ever since Spencer took over and Alex took over, he has not been the same receiver. I mean, under Tyrone with Nate Stanley here, he was terrific. The other thing you can point at is the fact that Amir Smith-Marset and Brandon Smith were here. And so Tyrone could kind of fit into that off role as a slot receiver and make plays without having to be the guy. So those are factors. I also think, just the COVID season probably affected him just like it affected everybody. And then also he's gotten opportunities this year. Iowa tried, especially early in the season, to get him the ball a lot, and he did suffer from some drops. And just, some missed opportunities on his own part. So there's no one necessarily specifically to blame. You also have to look at Iowa's recruiting class for 2021. It's one of the better classes that I can remember when you have guys, especially skill position players like Arlen Bruce and Keegan Johnson. Those guys really emerged. And then quarterback play was so bad throughout the year that it's just a combination of things. But again, I don't blame him one bit for leaving. I wish him all the best. And here's what I hope for Tyrone. I hope he goes somewhere where he can get, because he's got 2 years of eligibility left. That's what people don't realize. He's a junior. He redshirted, but he's going to have a COVID year if he wants it. Plus, he'll have his senior year of eligibility. So, the way I look at this situation with Iowa's wide receiver room, I'm just hopeful that Iowa can figure out a way to keep Keegan Johnson, keep Arlen Bruce, because right now the offense is as bad as it's been since probably, they've had some bad years here and there, but it's as bad as I can remember in my lifetime. So probably since 99. And I just, they've got really good skill position talent. I do wonder how engaged Nico Reganey. I have no reason to think he's going to transfer, but I did bring that up on my show, on my video today. He's also a guy who's sort of taken a back seat to much younger players throughout this season. So we're down to 6 scholarship wide receivers now, Mark, which is a pretty low number. They do have a kid coming in next year, Jacob Bostic out of the Chicago area. So that will help. But anyways, wish Tyrone all the best, and you just hope that Iowa can keep that wide receiver room happy and, figure out a quarterback to throw him the ball.
Corey, as you run through much of this, I am needing to start a list because there are so many things that I would like to hit on concerning this football team and this football program, but understanding, aside from the Citrus Bowl, there's not going to be any football played until next September. So it's a long off season for us to hit on all these different topics. So the one that comes to mind that's more immediate, because we can talk, I think we really will be addressing the offensive woes from this past season, but from seasons past, and what's going on from a program standpoint there. But you mentioned that the Citrus Bowl, that the fan base is not excited about the Citrus Bowl. Does that have to do with the Citrus Bowl itself, location, opponent, or because had this team arrived, a 10-win football team at a Citrus Bowl, having lost its first couple Big Ten games, having been out of it and finished strong, would that be different than going thud in Indianapolis and there really not being a good place to go after that?
There probably would have been a little bit more excitement at this point if Iowa hadn't won the West, because you'd have an extra week to kind of regather yourself and decompress and process everything that happened. Orlando's a place Iowa hasn't been since 2005 with the infamous Tate to Warren Holloway catch.
Yep.
So there's some history there. But at the same time, it's like, I really like this opponent. I think Kentucky is an intriguing opponent. The Mark Stoops connection. Mark, I know some people will get offended they always get offended when I bring up, when will Kirk Ferentz leave? Who should replace him? I think that's still a valid question to bring up. And, Mark Stoops is on my list, my top 5. So that's an intriguing storyline. I saw a report, and I don't want to totally segue away from the bowl game, but I saw a report a few weeks ago, Mark, that before Mark was extended there at Kentucky, that said he has made it clear to those closest to him. And again, these are just, anonymous sources, but he has made it clear to those closest to him that he's not leaving Kentucky. The only real motivation for him to leave would be if the Iowa job opened up. And I just, I don't doubt that. I don't know as much about Mark as I do about Bobby. But you and I have both said, I believe Bobby would coach here. I do. I could be wrong on that. I don't think that's a pipe dream. I think Bobby would take this job. If Kirk retired tomorrow, which he's not going to, I think they could hire Bobby Stoops. So be that as it may, I could be wrong, but I think the same is true. If you're trusting that report, I think the same is true of Mark. So it's a weird situation to be in. I keep thinking about all that Kirk has given this program, and he deserves to go out when he wants to go out. And they're coming off a 10-win season. So I'm in no way implying that he needs to be let go or told that it's the end of the road. But you just wonder, where is Kirk's mind? Scott Dochterman of The Athletic brought this up on Twitter a few days ago, actually right before the championship game, Saturday morning. He tweeted out that Kirk met with his players Friday night and told them he would be returning for 2022 and for multiple seasons beyond. Now, I brought that up to Coach Patterson, and we had discussions, and only theory that I could really come up with as to why that would be. Why would you say that to your players the night before the championship game is throughout that week leading up to the Big Ten title game, there was a lot made of Kirk's emotions. He was very emotional after winning the West and just in lead up to that game. And so you wonder if, him telling his players that he was returning was his way of sort of trying to get rid of the speculation in the media, because there were people in the media writing about, is this the end of the road for Kirk Ferentz? Is this his final game? Blah, 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 blah. And of course, it's not. But I don't know. It's just going to be, these next couple seasons are going to be very interesting. Here's what I don't want. This offense is so bad right now, Mark. And that's just, again, I'm not knocking Kirk for it, but it's so bad. The numbers tell you it's so bad that I don't want Kirk to wear out his welcome. They won 10 games this season despite this bad offense. I don't think they can do that again. If this offense doesn't make a movement forward, I foresee issues with winning games. I mean, I'm not even talking about winning West championships. I see, especially with that schedule next year, Mark, if this offense isn't good, that it easily could be a 7-win season next year. I mean, or worse. I mean, I'm not predicting that, but I'm just saying the schedule doesn't shape up real great next year. So I just don't want Kirk to wear out his welcome. I'm not implying that he should retire now at all. And he's earned every right to make that decision when he's ready. But I'm just telling you, I can't guarantee anything, but I just don't see any way, if Iowa continues the route they're going with the quarterback situation and the offense the way it is, they are not winning 10 games next season. That's just not happening.
Well, just the dynamics of the Western Division right now, it's not a situation where you can take many programs and say that other program's better, these one or two are on our level, and then we're better than everyone else. It's becoming such a balanced division that if things break wrong in a particular year for an Iowa, there's not a lineup of teams that they're just going to walk over automatically.
No.
And then with facing Ohio State and Michigan outside the division, and with a Iowa State, of course, that's going to be not nearly have the veteran talent that it has this year, but still a quality team and program. Yeah, if things break the wrong way in any given year, with what is this Western Division has become, you could be in store for a rough year or two.
Okay, Mark, let's just hypothetically, and I know we've already burned a half an hour, and we want to talk about Xavier Wampa's decision tomorrow as well. But let's just run through this schedule.
Sure.
And you, knowing what you know about Iowa, and assuming that because I think they're going to bring back a lot of pieces. For the record, if I had to guess, I think Charlie Jones will return next year. They're going to get almost everybody back. And I don't know who they're going to lose to the transfer portal. They've already lost Deuce Hogan. They've already lost Desmond Hudson at receiver. Then they lose Tyrone Tracy. Again, Reganey, I hope he stays. I think he's a leader on this team as well. But again, his snaps, there's a lot of guys you could say that about. But if I had to let me just run through these games, and you tell me, Mark, if it's the first thing that comes to your mind, win or loss, given what the team has right now. So South Dakota State, I think we can both agree it's probably a win, although it could be tricky. Iowa State and Kinnick.
Win.
Nevada and Kinnick.
Win.
At Minnesota.
Loss.
Home against Michigan.
Loss.
At Purdue.
Loss.
I mean, I don't know how you can predict a win in that game.
Here's the deal is, you're taking this game by game. That's certainly valid. I tend to, when I make predictions, I tend to block games together and say, Minnesota, Michigan, Purdue, Ohio State. Wow, that's a rough stretch. And when we look at them individually, maybe because the Purdue game's on the road, you lean toward a loss, but I would generally look at those four and say, okay, they get a win out of those four somewhere. Minnesota, Purdue, one of them. Proceed.
Okay. I know you do that, and I do respect how you pick games. At Ohio State.
Loss.
Okay, you get an off week. So right there, you've predicted, am I correct in saying 4 straight losses? That's, I mean, again, I know you're picking
taking them
differently than you normally
individually,
would.
yes.
4 straight losses, theoretically. if you had to make opening lines for the first block of the season, I think we can agree Minnesota, Michigan, Purdue, Ohio State would all be the favorites. That's just how it is. Northwestern and Kinnick.
Win.
Rutgers and Piscataway.
Win.
At Illinois. That's 50-50.
Yeah.
I'd go Iowa probably.
Yeah, I would.
Okay, Wisconsin and Kinnick. I think you have, again, that's like Purdue. I don't know how you pick against the Badgers against Iowa.
I'm going to go loss followed by a win against Nebraska.
And who knows what Nebraska, I mean, that we say it every year. And, once again, Iowa found a way to beat them this year. But at some point, you have to think they're going to get over that hump. So right there, just, again, giving them the benefit of the doubt against Nebraska, and giving them the benefit of the doubt against, Iowa State and Illinois, that's still a 7-5 season. Now, you're right. They could win, they could win at Purdue. They could win at Minnesota. But I definitely would not predict, as of right now, we'll see what happens. I mean, spring football is going to be fun, Mark, because I'm going to be very interested to see what Iowa does at quarterback. As of right now, if I had to pick a record, it would not be any better than 8-4 by any means. So, again, if they go 8-4 next year, Mark, and the offense is the same way, fans are going to get more and more impatient. And I know there's the apologists, and I understand where they're coming from that say, well, you got to be thankful 7, 8, 9 games. Nebraska would love to be in that position, or Illinois would love to be in that position. That's true, but it is what it is. We've been down the road as Iowa fans where, and of course, I was too young at this time to really be a part of it. But like the Tom Davis years in basketball, you want more, and what do you end up getting? You get far less. Now, Alford had his moments, but then you go from Alford to Licklider, and you could argue Hayden Fry wore out his welcome, and then you go before Hayden Fry and the coaches, the Evashevsky years, and after he left, it's just it's a pendulum oftentimes at Iowa, and I think that's the way it is at a lot of schools. It could be a lot worse. But the bottom line is, if this offense doesn't get any better, 8 wins, 9 wins probably isn't going to cut it anymore, because people don't like watching a team that gets skunked in big games like they did on Saturday.
I'm guessing we're going to touch upon this offense almost every show between now and the opener against South Dakota State. Is it South Dakota State? Yes, I got that right.
I hope that doesn't drive off our listeners when they know they have to hear about the Iowa offense.
That it's going to come up. It's just going to, hey, they're going to drive most of it, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
But I think that we will have to take one show, and it'll probably come in May when nothing's going on, where we just do a deep analytical dive on the offense, the personnel, what's coming back, who the top recruits are, what it could possibly look like, how it should change. Because to your point, and you read off the total offense rankings from the past 10 to 15 years, and I don't put stock in those rankings to the point that they're gospel truth, but it's a strong indicator as to what's going on. And when you are ranking 80th or 90th most seasons, I cannot believe that Kirk's not looking at that, knowing those numbers better than we do, and saying we have to change something. Functionally, something is not working here. We need to change how we recruit, develop the scheme, the something. Something has to change.
I just said that on Sunday, and I am not a panic porn guy. I don't push the panic button over anything, but I said it Sunday to Don, and I don't know that Don completely agrees with this, and obviously he knows more than I do, but I think it's time to overhaul this offense. I mean, it's not working. This outside zone stuff that we're trying to run, it doesn't work against anybody anymore. I don't know the last time Iowa ran the outside zone effectively against anybody. Somebody bring it up. I mean, I know that's simplifying it. It's it's much more complex than that. I don't think it is. And so, and holy cow, I know Aiden Hutchinson's good, but I watched Jack Plum and Mason Richmond. It wasn't just one guy. It was the entire offensive line just look terrible. And they're not, again, these are good kids. I'm sure they're working hard, And I'm not blaming them. There's coaching and I think philosophy issues right now with the offense. Now, some people want to blame the departure of Chris Doyle. I don't necessarily buy into the fact that it's a strength issue. There are technique issues with the Iowa's offensive line, and I saw that a lot on Saturday. So I don't know. I don't know where you go. I think philosophy needs to be looked at. Somebody asked us on the show this weekend, does Iowa need to make a change with personnel, or do they need to make a change with philosophy? And I think the answer is philosophy, because personnel is not going to change. So why do we even talk about it? What's the point of talking about? And as we continue to look at the rankings, the offensive numbers from the past 23 years, they've never been good. I mean, that's just a fact. And I've been critical of Brian Ferentz, but they've never been good. So what's the common denominator there, Mark? In the 23 years, we had 3 different offensive coordinators. I mean, it just is what it is. I'm not trying to knock anybody. I love Kirk Ferentz, but the common denominator is we have crappy offenses here. So there's going to always be a ceiling. Okay, there's going to always be a ceiling. It's like in 2015, the schedule just worked out perfectly. You have a strong defense. You have your best quarterback, maybe of the Kirk era. You could make that argument, even though Brad Banks was terrific. Brad Banks wasn't successful like C.J. Beathard was in the NFL. C.J. Beathard has actually been the most successful Iowa quarterback under Kirk Ferentz in the league. Well, whether you believe he's better than Brad Banks in college, that's a different story. But my point is, C.J. was sort of one of a kind at Iowa. You go 12-0, you compete, and you're that close to making the playoff, and then you go to the Rose Bowl and get absolutely pounded when you go up against a team with more athleticism and just, again, explosiveness that Iowa never has had. So I think it comes down to Kirk's not going anywhere right now, nor am I encouraging that he leave. So I hope that Kirk, and I'm not saying I don't think it'll happen, but what I'd like to see Kirk do is to look at this and say, all right, I've got, is it 2, 3, 4 more years left? Let's change how we do things. And if I make myself look like a fool, and if it fails, we fought our hardest to make this offense better. We did everything we could, and my legacy will be not a crappy offense, but an offense that we tried to fix things, and I went down. I went down trying. I don't want, again, for it to be a situation where this thing slowly just starts to, I don't know, degrade more and more. Because everybody I've heard from this week, everybody who's critical of Iowa football, they're critical of Iowa football, but then there's always that asterisk like, we did win 10 games. Again, this is not going to happen consistently with this type of bad offense, because this offense was worse than almost any other offense under Kirk's in Kirk's entire tenure, because they've had other years where they've won 10, 11, even 12 games, but it's not going to be able to continue as bad as it is right now. And just like in Iowa basketball, I say all the time, the defense doesn't need to be great. The offense is elite. Iowa's football's defense is elite. Special teams is elite. I mean, just look at like what LeVar Woods has done since he's been here. Every kicker Iowa has, I mean, I believe I looked at the numbers the other day. Iowa's like top 5 scorers, like 4 of the 5 are Iowa kickers from like the past 10 years. That's astonishing. I mean, he's brought in place kickers that are just tremendous. Miguel Racinos, Keith Duncan, obviously Caleb Shudak, Marshall Kane. It's Mike Meyer. It's incredible the guys they brought in. So special teams is great. Defense is great. They don't need to be elite offensively. So it's not, maybe the word overhaul is too strong for the Iowa offense, but I think some philosophy needs to change enough to where it's noticeable. It's clear to the fan base that, hey, we're trying something different. We're not trying to call different plays. We're not trying to throw a trick pass from Gavin Williams to our fullback in the end zone one time a game. No, we're trying something from a philosophical difference from what we normally run.
Yeah, sometimes I'm glad you said that, because a lot of people will interpret that as start throwing a lot of gadget plays and trick plays, and that could be something that's included as a 1 or 2 time per game offshoot of what you're fundamentally doing. But no, it's not about running gadget plays. It's not running particular plays that are schemed up. It's having a concept change, that's conceptual, something foundational that's different about your offense. And you're right. He could let's say Kirk Ferentz is around for another 3 seasons. He could grit his teeth and say, we do things our way, and this is what we do, and this I'm going down with the ship. And it's not like they're going to tank into 3 and 4 win seasons. Most likely, they're going to be 6 and 6, 8 and 4, 8 and 4. Let's say that's his last 3 years, and he rides off into the sunset, and nobody really pays much attention, thinking, okay, he ran out the string. But I think people would respect him. People that really know football certainly would. And then even people that are just reasonable would respect him for wanting to evolve and change and try something different. And it could be, I just can't imagine that they would, when you're ranking between 90th and 110th roughly in the nation in total offense, that if you conceptually do something different, where else is there to go? 120th in the nation in total offense?
The argument is, Mark,
capsize.
Kirk would argue with you, Mark, and say, we run our offense. The philosophy behind our offense is also game control, clock management, putting our defense in a position to succeed. So if we change how we run our offense, it affects the rest of what we do that makes us successful. But I don't think, I'm not talking about just a total 180, but I'm talking overhauling certain aspects of what you're doing. You mentioned gadget plays. 2017, 2018, Iowa ran a ton of special teams trick plays. And I don't know if it's because they just thought Colton Rastetter was just an amazing passer as a punter, because he wasn't a very good punter, but he was actually a pretty good guy behind center when they did run these trick plays. And then they got away from it. And the reality is they never really changed anything. Like you said, these are just little gadgets that they pulled out once in a while. The numbers, if you look at Iowa's offensive numbers from 2017, they were once again pretty poor. There have not been years where Iowa's even top 50 in the country. I mean, Iowa's consistently, that's what's amazing about it. Iowa's consistently a top 25 team almost every season, Mark. And yet, every year, they're not even top 50 in offense. Imagine if they could have a top 50 offense. Imagine what Iowa could do. I mean, you're looking at perennial West champions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but they just can't, I think there's just too much working against them. We've talked in the past about the new cut blocking rules that hurt running that outside zone. Kirk's even talked about that. And that's just one little aspect of why it doesn't work anymore. But a lot more goes into it than just that. I don't think it's just, I keep referring to outside zone. That's maybe the most frustrating part of Iowa's offense, watching Iowa run Tyler Goodson for 8 yards followed by -5. And that's usually always on a stretch play.
With all the thinking I do about college football every day, this never really crossed my mind, but it hit me in the scope of this conversation. And it's different personnel and they're different programs, but Ohio State, with all of its prolific numbers on offense, I cannot remember Ohio State ever running a wide receiver pass, a halfback pass, any kind of trick. They don't run trick play. They don't run any trick plays. They don't run reverses. They don't run any of that stuff.
Well, they don't have, there is a talent gap there, right? I mean, they can get up. Ohio State can just man up, and it's kind of like what Wisconsin has done. Although Wisconsin doesn't run, they run the gap blocking scheme offensively. And I think, I hear some Iowa media say, well, don't you think if that was the problem that Kirk would change it? Well, just because he's the head coach and he's deciding to run the zone scheme on offense with the running game doesn't necessarily mean that's the better way of doing this, because Paul Chryst runs gap blocking. And so I could say the same thing on his side. If don't you think if Paul Chryst is running it, that's the right way of doing things? So that doesn't prove anything. And let's be honest, who's more successful running the ball? It's not even a conversation. Now, you could also argue that they've been able to grab the Monty Balls, the Melvin Gordons, etc. So there's a talent gap. You brought up Ohio State. Ohio State can just line up and beat you off the ball at every position. So I think there is a bit of an advantage there. I think Iowa, Kirk is not a dumb guy. That's what's amazing. Like going back to the technique issues on the offensive line, he's an offensive line coach. People want to blame George Barnett. I'm wondering why is this offensive line not blocking better from a technique perspective. That's odd. I'm assuming it's going to get fixed because even when Iowa doesn't run the football well, their technique is, I'd like to think, I'm no offensive line guru, but I think it's a lot better than it has been this year. So I don't know. I don't quite understand that. But you're right. You don't have to. You don't have. Ohio State's proven it. Wisconsin's proven. When does Wisconsin run? Do they run a lot of trick plays? I mean, once in a while, the Brett Bielema infamous fake punt and pass against Iowa in 2010 will haunt Iowa fans forever. But they basically line up and beat you, and Iowa can't do that, even though we want to. Wisconsin runs what we want to run, except they run it effectively. That's the difference.
Some of these questions would be best served to your guy, Coach Patterson. But I would think a simple analysis of, let's start with this. Let's go through our entire playbook. And I would hope that they have the metrics on this like any other college football team would at that level of college football team. How successful? Play number one. How many times have we run it the last 3 years? How many times did we run it this particular season? And what are the net yardage and in what situations, against what defenses, and how successful? Well, if we have some unsuccessful plays that just continue to be, and I'm not even talking about, again, concept, just those individual plays. Okay, what's not working consistently? That might just be a bad play.
Well, Mark, let me give you a perfect example. So I people have been, especially Michigan fans this week, have been talking about how, well, you lost 42-3. The game wasn't even close. There's no point in talking about, plays that you missed. Well, there is, football is a game of momentum. And Mark, I think we could both agree. Not saying Iowa would have won, but when they got that 3-and-out to start the game Saturday, had they gone down and converted on that trick play from Williams to Potabom, you're up 7-0.
You don't know.
We have no idea how that would have changed the game. We have no idea how that would have changed the game. It was 14-3 at halftime, but we have no idea how that would have changed the game. Again, I'm not implying it would have, but we don't know. But Iowa follows that up with a 5-yard run. So that was a first down pass play from Gavin Williams, which is it was a great call. It was wide open. They just didn't execute it. So then they run the ball for 5 yards. On 3rd and 5, from the Michigan 17, they run the ball for -3 yards. On 3rd and 5. I don't know what planet I'm living on. It wasn't a draw play. It was just a simple off tackle run. -3 yards. Early second quarter, it's 2nd and 23. Mark, what do you think our next two play calls were on 2nd and 23? When you're down 14-3, by the way.
If I can remember even that sequence. How did they get to 2nd and 23? Penalty?
Yeah, holding call, I think.
I think if I remember the sequence, they threw like an out that was incomplete. It was a really good throw, but it was just broken up, and then they just ran it off tackle on 3rd and 23.
Well, you're wrong. They ran on 2nd and 23.
Okay.
And they ran on 3rd and 20. I mean, what are we doing? You're down 14-3, Mark. What are we doing here? You're down 14-3, and you're running the ball on second. We're just giving up. You're just saying,
how good are they on throwing screen passes?
Michigan is susceptible to the screen. We ran one screen against the Wolverines this weekend, Mark. That's what Don said that heading into this game. The Fox guys, Joel Klatt brought it up. The one thing Michigan's defense has been susceptible to this year have been screenplays. The first screen Iowa ran was at the 7-minute mark in the 3rd quarter, and they ran one screenplay, and it was at the 7-minute mark in the 3rd quarter. I mean, it's just, again, the play calling's bad. You have poor quarterback play. You can't run the football. You can't protect your poor quarterback play. You've got receivers that have dropped the ball. That's the least of your problems, but you've had receivers that have dropped the ball. There's just very little working for this offense, and that's why I've used the word overhaul. I've used the word overhaul because what else do you say? I mean, that's, and I don't know that, I understand those who say you don't need to totally overhaul it, but when you're that bad at multiple spots, that's how you get to being 110 in the country in offense. It's not just one thing. It's a combination of things. And I was very critical of Brian earlier in the season, but at some point you got to look at it and say, this is not just Brian Ferentz. This is a much deeper issue here.
They're losing their best player on offense. Yeah, I've been working on some videos for the college football playoff and the bowls, just looking at advanced metrics, and I was trying to find the site that I was going to. I was looking for Michigan's yards per carry defense average. I'm sure it's top 10 in the nation. So yeah, the running on 3rd and 5, you're in plus territory.
And then they missed the field goal. They missed the field goal.
Yeah, they missed the field goal. You're gonna have to score points in this game to win. It's just
no, it just doesn't make any sense.
The
and then
odds of you, let's say you're in a situation where, like I've seen this several times in both the NFL and in college football in the previous weeks with kicker injuries. Let's say you don't have a kicker. Okay, I understand running 3rd and 5 because you're going to go for it on 4th and 2. If you truly believe you've got a decent run play that may spring a first down, or at least you get it close and you know you're going for it on 4th down. They're not going for it on 4th down unless it's 4th and inches, maybe.
Oh no, they are, Mark. No, they went for it on 4th down. Remember, 3rd quarter, it's 4th and 3. You're down 18 points, 21-3.
I was talking about that opening possession on 3rd and 5.
I know, but I'm gonna rip the game management here for a second. 4th and 3, late 3rd quarter, right? It's 21-3. You need 3 scores. Okay, you get a field goal. It's down to a 2-score game. It's 4th and 3, and we go for it on 4th down, and don't get it. And you kick a field goal. It's like a 30 to 40 yard field goal. You kick a field goal. It's a 15-point game. You're still in the game. You play yourself out of the game because you go for it and don't get it. That was the game. It was over.
What did they do on 4th and 3?
They tried to run a misdirection play where Padilla runs right and then the tight end goes left, and Michigan saw that coming because Iowa runs that. It's been very successful.
Yeah.
And they snuffed it out, and there was not. So you had one option on the play. That was the whole Iowa's offensive game plan on Saturday. Unfortunately, was you have one option on every play. You ever notice that? Like early on in the game, people kept observing to me like, "Wow, Hutchinson's not getting home. Ojabo's not getting home. He's not getting home because we're taking a 2-step drop and tossing the ball to one guy. Spencer's not going through any reads. We're trying to get the ball out of the pocket quick, which I understand why you're doing that. It's not a bad move. You have to somehow offset Aiden Hutchinson when you know you have tackles that just aren't going to be able to handle him. But let's be honest, you're not going to be able to rely on any of Iowa's receivers consistently beating Michigan's defensive backs every single play down the field. So, and then another thing we brought up, just play calling and game management and obviously technique and scheme and all these different things. The other thing that Iowa really needs, and this is, again, these are my opinions. Nobody has to agree with these, but Iowa desperately needs somebody, one of the coaches. I don't care who it is. Okay. I don't care if it's Kirk's son-in-law, the recruiting coordinator, Tyler Barnes, somebody who is just there for late clock management. Because I kid you not, Mark, and this is not an exaggeration, it's every single game. I would think at some point, and again, some people just aren't good at it. I understand that. There's some things you're not good at as a coach, but you've got to rely on someone else. But every single game, I'm sitting there scratching my head, like, why are we in this game, late in the first half, 2 minutes to go. It's a 4th down for Michigan on their own side of the field. There's 2 minutes to go. Michigan, I don't know if they ran the ball or it was a completed pass, but the clock was moving. 2 minutes to go. We've got, I think, 3 timeouts. And we don't call a timeout with 2 minutes to go. So the time we get the ball back, there's like 1:20 to go. I mean, I don't know. That's like one of those things where under no circumstances would you not call a timeout there, because you can control getting out of bounds and getting first downs and stopping the clock on offense. You never not call a timeout on 4th down when the clock's moving on defense.
And you've got all 3.
Yes.
And you've got all 3.
And you're down 14-3.
Yeah. So for everything that you just cited, you've got control of the ball on offense. You can stop the clock so many different ways. And number 2, just simple math tells you when there's only 2 minutes, 120 seconds left in the game, and they can burn 40 of that like that without you doing anything about it. You can stop the clock 3 times.
And Mark, that's exactly what they did. They burned all 40 seconds. And now we didn't move the ball anyways, but that's not the point. That's like I had people saying, because I was a huge advocate based on the analytics heading into this game that Iowa needed to take the ball first. There was no way around it. Michigan had scored the first touchdown in all 12 games. They had the lead at halftime in all 12 games. There was under no circumstance, there's no wind at play, so there's no reason to defer because of weather. There was no reason not to take the ball first. And what do? Iowa wins the toss, and they defer. And at that moment, I thought, there's no explanation for it. There is no explanation for it. And somebody, well, that's not your, the defense is your strength. You know how many times this year, Mark, the defense has given up an opening drive touchdown? As great as Phil Parker's defenses have been, Iowa consistently gives up points in that first quarter. So everything screamed to take the ball first, and yet they defer and take the ball for the second half. So I don't know what the fix is. That's why I'm not trying to identify a specific thing. I brought up a couple things, the outside zone and whatnot, but all of these things are issues. I don't know how to solve them. That's why I'm not a coach, and I could never do what Kirk's doing. So, but I think the criticism that I'm expressing, I think it's all fair. These are just valid complaints. And again, I preface everything by saying I have a lot of respect for Kirk Ferentz. I have a ton of respect for Phil Parker. I don't think Brian Ferentz has the resume that is qualified to be a Big Ten offensive coordinator. That's not a personal attack on him. I'm just looking at his resume. I don't think he qualifies from a resume standpoint. But again, I'm not blaming specifically Brian, because I think there's a lot of things at play here, and it's going to come down to one person to ultimately decide we're going to fix this, and that's Kirk Ferentz. Kirk Ferentz is the guy that has to say, if I'm going to be here for 2 or 3 more years, we've got to do something drastically different with this offense. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, and like I noted at the outset of this segment of the conversation, we will have a complete off season to tear into the Iowa offense and all the issues that have ensued for this particular season, but it's been going on for years. As is noted in the comment section here, we certainly want to hit on the big news coming out tomorrow on Wednesday. Xavier Wampa making his decision.
Yeah, big day tomorrow. This would be great. If Iowa can get this commitment out of Xavier, I've heard nothing but good speculation. But again, I don't know. He could very well pick Ohio State. Are you going to be really tied to this? I mean, let's be honest. Ohio State gets 4- and 5-star kids all the time. So are you going to be really sitting there on the edge of your seat sweating to make sure you watch?
I had no idea that he was announcing tomorrow.
Well, that's just sad. And you're going to have just thousands of Iowa fans just glued to the TV screen. You're sitting back.
It is a big deal. I'm one of those guys that does not prepare for National Signing Day, except for what I have to do here. But by desire, I do not prepare in any way to follow a bunch of 17 and 18-year-olds whims around. I'm not that guy. Similar to the NFL draft, I don't want to hear all the speculation about the NFL draft, because 98% of it is null and void once they get drafted. So I just want to know, let's get it to the final results and find out who went where.
Absolutely. Well, this is an opportunity for Iowa to get a type of recruit they don't normally get. You'd mix them right in there with the likes of Tristan Wirfs and AJ Epinesa. So it's an opportunity to really give a boost to a recruiting class that's good. In fact, this is kind of a good time to put a plug in for my channel, because next week during my weekly podcast, we'll be releasing an interview with Iowa's top-rated prospect, Aaron Graves, who is a small-town kid in Iowa, but he's the only 4-star recruit that's committed to this class for 2022. So we'll be releasing that show next week. So if you haven't already, thanks for putting that up there, Mark, From the Hawkeye of the Storm on YouTube. Please subscribe to that, because we, of course, have post-game shows with Coach Gary Close, who's a former Iowa assistant under Tom Davis. Went to a couple Final Fours on the Bo Ryan staff with Wisconsin. So we do post-game shows there. We're going to have live coverage. Xavier's decision tomorrow, Mark, is at 4 p.m. Central Time, so 5 Eastern. And we will be live on From the Hawkeye of the Storm on on YouTube at 3:30 p.m. Central Time. So we'll be there a little before the announcement, then we'll react to the announcement. Hopefully good news. We'll take calls and whatnot. So be sure to subscribe to that. But yeah, this would really boost Iowa fans' spirits, in addition to a recruiting class that's a bit thin.
So we have over 200 on the line right now. We appreciate everyone being here, and thank you so much for tracking us and making this a part of your Iowa football content and your consumption of entertainment, period. So we appreciate it. We value you and your time, and that you have chosen us. So also keep in mind that in addition to hopefully being subscribed here at the Voice of College Football Iowa, that you head on over to Corey's channel, From the Hawkeye of the Storm, as an Iowa sports fan, football, basketball, and across the board, that you would, again, if you enjoy the content here, you're going to enjoy the content over there, and you get the basketball in addition, plus you get some football content that you don't get here as well. So lock in over there, From the Hawkeye of the Storm. If you need to do it right this second, just jump in the search bar right above, whether you're on your phone or on your laptop, should be right near the top of the screen, From the Hawkeye of the Storm. Jump on over there. Come on back. If you need to do that before you forget, then go ahead and do that. We appreciate everyone who got us over 1,000 subscribers over that threshold here in the last couple of weeks. It's a key algorithm for the YouTube community, for any content creators. And so we would like to do the same for Corey over at From the Hawkeye of the Storm. So please do that.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Mark. And we probably bug people enough about getting this channel over 1,000. So once we get From the Hawkeye of the Storm over 1,000, I promise we'll stop bugging people to subscribe. But please subscribe From the Hawkeye of the Storm on YouTube. It would be a much appreciated for me, and we can continue to push out great content on basketball and football.
You wonder, in looking at Wampa and his, of course, options to go anywhere he wants, but it's basically Ohio State, Notre Dame, Iowa, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
And I know this varies with each individual because what they value for their sports career, their athletic career, and their just location of and the surroundings, and then also the education, of course, is different. But a prospect like that, we're talking the top player in the state, a top player at his position. 247 Sports has him rated as the #1 safety in the country, a top 10 to 40 player, depending on your service in the nation, regardless of position. So you're talking rarefied air right there. What goes through his mind when he watches the Big Ten championship game? Whether he has all those other long range plans and perspective on it, that he's completely unwavered by that, or if that plants any seeds of doubt in his mind as to, I love Iowa, love the coaching staff, love my position coach, everything is great, but do I want to get myself involved in a situation where maybe I can't advance to winning big games?
Yeah, and who's the new head coach for Notre Dame? I don't have his name in my head yet.
Marcus Freeman.
And I believe Freeman was the guy that was heavily involved in Xavier's recruitment. So after he took the head coaching job, he visited Xavier, is my understanding. So, if maybe, I mean, I'm hearing nothing but positive speculation. But, potentially that hurts Iowa if Freeman could sway him now that he's the head coach there. But I predicted it over the weekend. I think Xavier will commit here, but that's total speculation. I don't have any. I'm not going to act like I have any inside information on that. But it would be great because they put a lot of work into recruiting him. In fact, Phil and I know Xavier posted a picture of that yesterday. Phil and Jay Neiman, Iowa's recruiting coordinator, or defensive recruiting coordinator, along with Kirk. They all visited him, I believe, last night. So they're putting in the time. But I'm sure Ryan Day and Freeman are both doing the same thing. So, yeah, it'll be a big opportunity. I don't know. I haven't really compared rankings, but I'm trying to think back. I don't remember how highly recruited. I mean, he's much higher. He's higher as far as rankings than AJ Epinesa and Tristan Wirfs both were. But I'm trying to think back who would be the next highest. Trying to think. Can you think of who the next highest recruit Iowa's nabbed under Kirk Ferentz?
I believe I'll be able to find it here on 247. I believe they've got a page where they have the highest ranked players in that school's history.
I can tell you that Blake Larson. I don't know if you remember that name, Mark. He was I think a 5-star guy that ended up having a lot of injury issues. He was really highly recruited. But I don't know. I'd be anxious to see if you can find that there. Who else would be in that conversation? And of course, Jaden Proctor. People forget Jaden Proctor is a 2022 kid. So you get two kids from Southeast Polk that would completely change the dynamic of recruiting, at least for these couple of years. Would be huge staples for this staff.
There's a page you can go to on 247 Sports, and it lists the, I may have it here, all-time commits. Okay. Number 1, according to 247 Sports, is Kyle Williams, linebacker, class of 04.
Yeah, I was pretty young. I was pretty young in 04. Epinesa was how highly recruited was
He's
Epinesa.
The second highest in the history of the program.
Yeah, Dan Doring. I see Andy's comment here. Dan Doring, how high was he? He's another kid that I forget about.
6th.
Okay.
Those are all 5 stars.
But I'm guessing Xavier would probably be the highest. Or would William... I don't know if there's a composite there that's listed, but or if they even did that back in 04.
Well, yeah, they are showing their composite ranking. They're like Kyle Williams was a .9908.
Wow.
Matt Roth, he was
Matt
number
Roth
5.
Yeah.
Larson's 4. Anthony Mawiki, the tight end, yeah.
Moyaki, yeah.
2005, yeah. Okay. So
it's amazing. More of the majority of those guys were actually sort of busts. Like, I mean, Dan Doring and Blake Larson and Moyaki was terrific in college. He was sort of a disappointment, and he just had injury issues, and as did Larson. A lot of those guys. I mean, injuries can derail you. Think about Greg Oden. You're an Ohio State guy.
Oh yeah,
he's maybe the biggest bust in NBA history. So
Roth was a great player.
Yes, he was. Very, very, and sort of underrated. As great as he was, if it's possible to be underrated, as great as he was a bit underappreciated, in my opinion.
I don't remember Dace Richardson, offensive tackle, 2005.
Yeah, he was good. I think he's working as a police officer down in Des Moines now, actually. But
Jeremiah Hunter, linebacker, 06.
Yeah, but again, I'm not saying these guys were busts, and Jeremiah Hunter played a lot, but he didn't play much in the NFL, if I recall. I mean, I probably did, but
he did not play in the NFL. They don't have him listed with an NFL team, and they do with these other guys.
What about Bulaga? Where's Brian Bulaga on that list?
They only have a top 10, and maybe there's a tie for 9th, so they don't even show. Okay. Oh, wait a minute. No, they do. It continues from there. Jermel Lewis is 9, and Brian Bulaga is 10.
Yeah.
There have been, it's a rare commodity, 7 5-stars in the history of the program.
So can we agree tomorrow might be that's a big day? Wow. I mean, if they can grab Xavier, that's a big day, Mark.
That's crazy.
So
yeah.
Yeah, and Seth just commented Robert Gallery. I don't know did you see Gallery anywhere on the list? Or no, Noah Fant? Noah Fant's another guy. I don't think Fant. He was a D end in
this only
high
goes
school. I don't
10.
remember him being more than a 4-star. He certainly wasn't a 5-star.
Oh, wait a minute. No. They've got I should have known 247 would have a crazy long list here. So they do.
But there's only 7 5-stars on there, so
CJ Fedorowitz, the tight end. He's a
man. I can't believe that. Yeah, the kid out of Illinois, and he was. He talk about underappreciated. He was really good in the NFL.
Jay Christensen,
bust. Yeah,
but I mentioned him because I remember him.
Half of these guys you could argue are sort of busts. If we're talking about what you expect out of a 4 or 5-star kid, a lot of these kids you could argue were busts.
Jaleel Johnson was a good player, right?
Very good player. Yeah, absolutely. Still playing in the league.
20. AJ Derby.
Bust. Ended up going to Arkansas, playing tight end, I believe.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Who am I looking for? Oh, I'm looking for Fant.
Fant, I don't know. Not Dan Doring.
Johnson is 43rd.
Yeah, we're really starting to get
as a 4-star.
No offense to Keegan. I mean, no, that was a great grab, but yeah, there's a drop off there. after you get past that.
He's still
first.
the 43rd highest rated player in
Yeah.
the history of the program.
It's the reason why he's playing as a true freshman. So,
James Daniels, obviously, stud.
Yeah, so Tristan Wirfs isn't on that list?
I'm not. Tyler Linderbaum is 55. I'm not seeing Wirfs.
Man alive. Where's Wirfs? Wirfs has got to be on there. I don't remember.
Maybe I missed him. Deuce Hogan.
Yeah, Wirfs is a 4, I think. There's no. I mean, it's amazing. After these kids come and go, I don't forget where they were ranked. Besides some of the obvious 5-star kids.
Marvin McNutt.
Who was recruited as a quarterback.
Maybe I just missed him. Spencer Petras is the 58th rated player.
Yeah.
There's Tristan Wirfs, 46.
Wow. And he's going to go down, Mark, as one of the best offensive linemen to play here. I saw some stat earlier today from Pro Football Focus that he's got the longest streak in the league right now at not allowing a sack. And he's just really good. And that's part of the reason why Iowa, as great as or as bad as the interior of the line was in 19, man, they had bookends at tackle with Alaric Jackson and Tristan Wirfs. Both those guys are playing in the league right now. Appreciate that from Kingpin. Not trying to troll, just coming here to tell. Yeah, I want to say this. I'll just say this as my closing statements, and then I'm not gonna bring up anything regarding Michigan anymore. There have been so many really nice Michigan fans who have reached out and complimented our show with Don and our show with you, Mark. And so I do appreciate that. There have been a number of disrespectful Michigan fans, which is unfortunate, but there have also been a large number of fans who've been very kind and supportive of the show. So I appreciate that, Kingpin, and everybody who's been very respectful and kind. We're coming here to give our opinions, Mark, and I always say if you don't like the opinion, you don't have to watch. But again, I appreciate the kind words from a lot of Michigan fans this week.
Yeah, the fortunate thing about social media is we get to connect and hear from all sorts of great people out there. The unfortunate would be that it gives a platform and a spotlight to some people that are rude and obnoxious and otherwise. So it amplifies the good and the bad.
Last question, Mark, before we go tonight. All right.
Okay.
I'll ask it to you. Is Spencer the starter next year at Iowa, next fall?
No.
Okay, so apparently Mark doesn't think Spencer Rattler's transferring to Iowa.
Well, I think number one, that Padilla, based on just being able to run around and make a few things happen or just extend plays, not in any kind of exceptional dynamic way, but that he can at least do that. Plus, they should be in the transfer portal looking for a quarterback.
They should be. Yeah. Well, I hope, I've heard a lot of good things about Joey Labus. I hope
Adrian Martinez.
Hey, another guy that just got, actually somebody told me, who was it? We had a caller that called in the other day and I don't know, but he said that he heard that Adrian Martinez was being pursued by Iowa, and I've not heard that from anyone. I would be, but you know what? They should. They should pursue.
Wouldn't that be funny?
They should be open to every one of those possibilities. Because obviously I was joking about the whole Spencer Rattler thing. He's not coming to Iowa, but in general, Iowa should be. You're not dissing anybody. They have a problem in the quarterback room. It's not just Spencer. Alex ain't great either. I mean, I like Alex. I like both kids. They're nice kids, but they need an upgrade there.
If they could teach Adrian Martinez to protect the football the 5 to 8 times, I'm just ballparking it.
He's really
he's
athletic.
Loose with the football. And it's not interceptions. He gets strip sacked all the time. He fumbles at the worst times too.
Yeah.
If they could, they would upgrade considerably at quarterback.
Yes, they would. Yeah, they would.
It would just be funny. I'm an outsider to it all, but it would be funny because my interactions with both fan bases and both teams, and then just being a Big Ten guy and watching the games, and because they play the final game of the season and there's a rivalry there, it would be a fun story actually to see Adrian Martinez play in the black
Well,
and gold.
I know Kirk is not really, he doesn't dip into the portal a lot. But he's got, Kirk is kind of like Fran McCaffrey. When he decides to go to the portal, it usually is a good decision. Like he gets, now Oliver Martin's an exception. That didn't work. But again, was Iowa ever going to really turn down Oliver Martin? As a kid, they worked so hard to get. He obviously wanted to come home. That was not a bad decision. I can't remember the kid from New Mexico that came in that everybody was all over. Quarles, a couple of years ago. I don't remember his first name. His last name was Quarles, but he came here and never played. So they've missed on some. But James Butler, transfer from Nevada, was a very good compliment to Akram Wadley in 2017. Obviously, Mekhi Sargent was a really solid piece. He's the only running back from Iowa playing. I think he got some time this past weekend for the Rams. So I think it's the right time to do it. If you're ever going to go into the quarterback for a transfer, it's the time to do it. It makes sense for your team's makeup. You just lost a quarterback in Deuce Hogan. Carson May did just get reclassified, I think, by Rivals as a 4-star recruit today. I don't know how much that means. Carson May fits into the Spencer Petras mold as far as mobility, so he's not Adrian Martinez. But there's going to be a lot of quarterbacks that are moving around. That happens every year now with the transfer portal, and he'll be eligible immediately. Mark, right? I mean, I guess it's just a 1-year rule right now. I guess there's no guarantee he's eligible immediately, right?
And what I just thought of is that because he's been so banged up and he just had shoulder surgery, that the two footnotes here would be, number one, that I've seen online where he's been connected to Kansas State, meaning Adrian Martinez, Kansas State, and Cal. He's taken trips there and been seen at practice. And number two, that he may opt to redshirt this next season because he may not be completely healthy at that point. Not play and extend his collegiate career to 2023.
The Jordan Bohannon of football. Yeah. But there's going to be other guys. There are other guys that are going to be out there that Iowa could look at. I know there's Joey, again, I go back to Joey Labus. He's a little bit more mobile from what I've heard, and he's Iowa's third-string quarterback now with Deuce gone. And we don't have time to talk about this, I know, but boy, Deuce Hogan's mom just let loose on the university earlier this week. Said that the young players on the team, actually, you want me to read it, Mark? For anybody who hasn't heard,
I'm done for the night after this, so I'm
all right. Let me read this, and then we can say goodbye. So anybody who doesn't want to hear what Deuce Hogan's mom had to say, I apologize.
I'm going to find Iowa quarterback in the next week or two. I'm going to be scouring the transfer portal, and I'm going to make.
Feel free to forward that on to Kirk.
Okay.
This is what Deuce Hogan's mom posted on Facebook. A letter to my son. Son, you astound me. Watching you weather this storm with grace makes this mama so proud. There is no doubt that God gave you the answer you asked for. You had no option. Everyone inside the facility knows it. I know how hard this has been. I know you were promised opportunities that never manifested. I know you watched patiently, albeit painful, as all the reps were ran without you. I've seen the film. I've heard those that were there every day say you were the most talented. I've read those texts. I listened to the testimonies of the teammates that were so perplexed as to why you weren't starting. I heard the voicemails. I know the apology was sincere, too late but sincere. It's referring to Kirk's comment, which was a dumb comment that he made after the Nebraska game, that basically somebody asked him, well, were you considering Deuce? And he said, well, no offense to Deuce, but if that was what we were at, I would have stayed home in Iowa City. Bad comment to make. He apologized for it, but it was just a dumb comment. I know the tears that were shed by your teammates, managers, trainers, teachers, shop owners, and friends in Iowa City when you said goodbye. Stunned, saddened, hurt. I heard your teammates tell you you'll always be their quarterback, even willing to go wherever you end up. I know your Mahomes nickname from your teammates. I know you are a patient man and your time was coming, inevitable, and all the things that the fans are waiting for is in you. And even though it was brutal to wait, you were willing with no malice, unlike your mother. I know I am unbelievably grateful for the man you are. You are a mighty man of God. You have impacted many already in your lifetime, and this is only the beginning. I am one of many. Buying a one-way ticket to drive home with you, a whirlwind of goodbyes, and a 20-hour road trip will forever be etched into my memory. It was a privilege to witness you during this time. Kind, positive, thoughtful, confident. Phone blowing up with calls, texts, and chats, and offers. We will soon see what is next. We may not know the future, but we do know that God does. I know the plans, and she quotes the scripture. Side note for those, I don't know that. I don't have the side note, actually. It's cut off. But basically, she said that the comment by Kirk was the last straw for Deuce. And it was a dumb comment to make. I mean, can you imagine? And Kirk deserves to be criticized for that. Can you imagine working your butt off? And I'm not saying he's the best quarterback on the. I mean, obviously she thinks so. She's Mama Bear, right? But can you imagine being a quarterback that's busting your hump? You never get to play in a game. In the final game of the season, both your QBs get the flu, and you're taking a bunch of reps with the one squad throughout the week. Then the two quarterbacks that you thought maybe you'd have to start for get healthy. So you're deflated about that, I'm sure. Deuce doesn't even get to go to the game because maybe he was. I don't know. But regardless, he doesn't play in the game. And then Kirk says after the game when he was asked, did you consider starting Deuce, or was that a possibility? With all due respect to Deuce, if that had happened, I would have stayed back in Iowa City. Can we agree on that, Mark? That's a terrible thing to say. Very, very insulting.
Yeah.
So, and he apologized for it. Kirk did the right thing in apologizing. We all make mistakes, but I don't blame Deuce one bit. And it's not an insult to Deuce Hogan that he didn't play, because let's be honest, do we have a whole lot of confidence in Iowa as far as evaluating QBs? I don't right now.
Where is Deuce from?
He's from Texas. Not a real big school in Texas, but boy, if he goes to another school, and we've seen like Peyton Manziel is a perfect example. Transfers out, never really, didn't end up at a Power 5 school or anything like that. But if Deuce Hogan ends up at a Power 5 school and starts next year and does well, Mark, look out. Can you imagine? Can you imagine the storm here in Iowa City? Derecho number 2. It's going to be nasty. So, anyways, what his mom has to say doesn't mean it. I mean, obviously, she's taking a shot at the university. It is what it is. It doesn't mean that he was the best quarterback, but it will not look good for Iowa if he goes somewhere else and succeeds. But I wish him all the best.
We do have a related super chat from Spaghetti Factory. Deuce is going to be great in the FCS.
Yeah, maybe he will go FCS. I don't know. There's going to be there's going to be a lot of quarterbacks to choose from. But Spaghetti Factory, we appreciate, by the way, the super chat there. But I don't know that Spaghetti Factory is at practice every day to see if he's, an FCS quarterback or not. We just don't know.
The number one quarterback in the 2021 recruiting class just left Ohio State a few days ago.
Oh yeah, Iowa's got a great chance at Quinn Ewers. Oh yeah. Actually, they've lost 2 QBs, haven't they, Mark? Who's the other one?
Jack Miller had some issues. I believe he did decide.
My guess is, without knowing anything about why Jack Miller left, I would guess that I would have a much better shot at Jack Miller. I wouldn't, if I was Kirk Ferentz, I wouldn't even call Quinn Ewers and talk to his agent. He's probably got an agent, right? I wouldn't even do that. I would contact Jack Miller.
Quinn Ewers already has a $1.4 million NIL deal.
I know. Yeah. Isn't that ridiculous?
Jack Miller, by his own right, even though he was the 4th guy in line, was a top 12 or 13 quarterback in the nation.
That's what I'm saying. So, I mean, like, if we're even going to have that discussion about going to recruit an Ohio State quarterback, it's not going to be Ewers. It's going to be the lesser of the evils, or the lesser of the goods. But let's be honest, Jack Miller would be probably a tremendous upgrade over what Iowa has right now. But let's be honest, Petrus was a highly recruited kid.
Yeah.
We always heard about how he broke all kinds of Jared Goff's records. So it's not just quarterback. There is it's the system. It's not just the QBs. That's why I've defended Spencer a lot this year. But again, it's just so many different things playing into this. But the good things, if people want to leave people on a good note, the Citrus Bowl, we should feel good about Iowa's chances because Kentucky does turn the ball over at a high rate, and Iowa, of course, turns people over at a high rate. So that matchup on paper would tell you Iowa could get them in some trouble early in that game. And if you play from ahead, that's what Iowa needs to do to win. Grab an early lead.
One last note I'll make on the topic of offense, and again, this conversation will continue through the offseason. You see all this money being thrown around all over the country for head coaches and then by extension, their coaching staffs. I don't know what I was paying their assistant coaches. I assume it's got to be very competitive within the Big Ten, at least for them to have the status that they do in the Big Ten. But that would be part of my evaluation process of this offense, and the overhaul would be, okay, we've got to go get some proven coaches that can develop quarterbacks, that can scheme and play call. But obviously there's a
Mark,
bit of
I believe, I could be wrong on this now, maybe things have changed, but last I checked, Ken O'Keefe was the highest paid quarterbacks coach in the country. Think about that for a second. I mean, really, I want you to sit there for a second, Mark. I want you to sit in your seat, and I want you to really process what I just told you. Ken O'Keefe, Iowa's he's not an offensive coordinator / QB's coach. He is Iowa's QB's coach, and he's the highest paid QB's coach in the country. So I'm not ripping him, but something's got to change there, right? Like, why are we paying a guy? I mean, if the results on the field are not are this poor, it's got to be a change somewhere. And Brian Ferentz is making a lot of money too for an offense that is just really bad. So these guys are all responsible. You're getting paid to be criticized. You're not getting paid to be disrespected. That's why I try to always preface things, with, hey, this isn't a personal attack, but you deserve to be criticized if you're not performing on the football field as a coach. The players are different. I mean, you can criticize players all you want. I think, these are kids that, yeah, they have the NIL deals now, but ultimately they're not getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to do what they're doing. So if anybody's going to take criticism, like Mike Gundy says, he's a man. Take a shot at him. He's a man. So we can do that. We can apply that to Iowa too.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. We will be back here next Tuesday night at 4:30 Central Time with Corey. In the meantime, head on over to From the Hawkeye of the Storm. From the Hawkeye of the Storm. If you need the visual, it's right here on the banner.
Live show tomorrow. Live show tomorrow at 3:30 Central Time. As we will cover the Xavier Wampa decision. 3:30 Central tomorrow. My channel.
Awesome. All right, Corey. We appreciate it. We'll see everyone back here next week. In the meantime, tomorrow at 3:30 Central with Corey on From the Hawkeye of the Storm.
Thanks, Mark.